Thank you, Kim, for reporting the first half of Lesson 6. Now let's move on to the second half. After we learn the criteria in measuring performance, we will now tackle about the different approaches. We have 5 approaches in measuring performance: the comparative, attribute, behavioral, results, and quality approach. In comparative approach, as the name suggests, it compares employees' performance to one another. Employees are ranked on the basis of highest to lowest performer. It is usually done in a case of firms with a small group of employees that has similar job profiles. There are 3 methods in comparative approach. The first one is ranking. There are 2 types of ranking, the simple and alternation ranking. In simple ranking, employees are ranked within a department from highest to lowest to poorest performer. While in alternation ranking, the rater has a list of all the employees, then he decides the best employee and crosses them off the list. From the remaining names, the worst employee is decided and crossed off the list, and so on and so forth. Forced distribution. Forced distribution also uses a ranking format, but the difference is employees are ranked in groups. Most commonly, employees are grouped within 3, 4, or 5 categories, indicating the best workers, the worst workers, and 1 or more categories in between. With forced distribution, top performers can be promoted to higher managerial positions with proper training and guidance, while the poor performers are given a chance for further improvement or dismissed if their performance does not meet the standard requirement. Paired comparison. It compares every employee with every other employee in the work group. An employee receives a point every time they are considered the higher performer. The summation of all the points is the employee's performance score. Attribute approach. Attribute approach focuses on an employee's certain attributes that is desirable for the company's success. An advantage of attribute approach is its simplicity. It is also easy to develop and generalizable, although it can be subjective and the method is accurate in identifying only the best and worst performers. There are 2 methods in attribute approach. The first one is graphic rating scale. The graphic rating scale is the most common form of attribute approach. It can provide a number of different points, or a discrete scale, or a continuum along which the rater simply places a check mark, which is a continuous scale. The figure over here is a discrete scale. The performance dimension is given as well as the numeric value. In a continuous scale, this numeric value will be replaced by a check mark. The next one is the mixed standard scale. In a mixed standard scale, the employees are first rated as high, medium, or low in a set of parameters. Each parameter is then broken down and scaled as above, equal, or below. Behavioral approach. Behavioral approach is somewhat similar to attribute approach, so to avoid confusion, let's discuss the difference between the two. The difference is attributes is what a person is. These are abstract qualities that describe the object, while behavior is what a person does or the actions that the person does. So, behavioral approach attempts to define behaviors an employee must exhibit to be effective in the job. It is also one of the oldest performance management techniques. Behavioral approach has 3 methods. The first one is behaviorally anchored rating scales or bars. Bars uses scales based on parameters which are most often decided consensually from all employees. Employees are ranked on each of the anchors based on their performances. However, it can bias information recall. Behavioral observation scales or BOS. BOS is a variation of bars, also developed from critical incidents, but they differ in 2 ways. Rather than discarding a large number of behaviors that exemplify effective or ineffective performance, BOS uses many of them to specifically define all the behaviors necessary for effective performance. Rather than assessing which behavior best reflects performance, BOSS requires managers to rate frequency with which the employee has exhibited each behavior during the rating period. BOSS provides a more specific description along with the frequency in regard to employee behavior. The overall score is the average of all these frequency. Although it is very reliable and accurate, a major drawback is the voluminous data. Supervisors tend to remember only those behaviors that define closely to the performance scale, which lead to the bias rating. Competency models. Competencies are a set of skills, knowledge, abilities, and personal characteristics that enable employees to successfully perform their job. The competency models identifies and provides description of competency that are common for an entire job or organization. It is useful for a variety of HR practices, can be used to help identify the best employees to fill open positions, and includes leadership and managerial, functional, and development areas. Results approach. The approach is a simple and straightforward concept. It takes into consideration the external environment of the job, such as the customers and learning and growth. The only disadvantage are the lack of focus on the human resource aspect and the absence of certain key stakeholders and the indicators. Results approach has two methods, which is the balanced scorecard and the product measurement and evaluation system. But before that, let's discuss the use of objectives. In the result-based system, the top management team first defines the strategic goals for the coming year. These goals are used as standards by which an individual's performance is evaluated. The most effective goals are SMART goals, which is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. Balanced scorecard. It includes four perspectives of performance, including financial, customer, internal or operations, and learning and growth. Financial perspective focuses on creating growth in shareholder value. What is shareholder value? This is the finances of the company, the income of the company. Customer perspective defines value for customers. Internal or operations perspective focuses on customer satisfaction, while learning and growth perspective focuses on organizational innovation. Product measurement and evaluation system, or PROMES, is very effective in motivating employees for enhanced productivity and measuring the feedback. The organizations calculate an overall productivity score as a summation of the performance score of all these factors. There are four steps in PROMES. The first one is to identify the objectives the organization wants to achieve. The second is to measure how well these objectives are made. The third step involves how effective are the objectives in evaluating employee performance. And the last one is giving feedback to the employees. Quality approach. The first part of quality approach is actually missing on the module, as well as the last part of PROMES, or the one in the last approach. So you can take notes if you want to, but this will be available in our drive, so you can watch anytime you want. Okay, so quality approach. It focuses on improving customer satisfaction by reducing errors and achieving continuous service improvisation. It assesses both employees and the system itself and uses multiple sources to evaluate performance. A method of this is Kaizen. It refers to practices anticipated in by the employees from all levels of the company that focuses on continuous improvement of business processes. It involves considering a continuous cycle of activities, including planning, doing, checking, and acting. Techniques. Statistical process control techniques are very important in quality approach. These techniques provide employees with an objective tool to identify causes of problems and potential solutions. So there are 6 techniques in quality approach. The first one is process flow analysis. It identifies each action and decision necessary to complete work. Cause and effect diagrams, events and causes that result to undesirable outcomes are identified. Pareto chart highlights the most important cause of a problem. Control charts involves collecting data at multiple points in time. Histograms, useful for understanding the amount of variance between outcome and the expected value. Well, scattergrams shows the relationship between two variables, events, or different pieces of data. After we identify the approaches in measuring performance, we now have to choose a source per performance information. It is necessary to decide whom to use as the source of performance measures. Each source has specific strengths and weaknesses. Like the approaches, there is no best approach, and every approach mentioned has their strengths and weaknesses. So there are 5 primary sources of information. The first one is managers. Most companies include manager and self-assessment of performance. Most frequently, the source of performance information. Managers have extensive knowledge of the job requirements. Some supervisors may be biased against a particular employee that would result in less than accurate measures for that individual. Favoritism is a part of organizational life, but it is one that must be minimized as much as possible in performance management. One way to do this is not to rely on only a supervisor's evaluation of an employee's performance. Peers are excellent source of information as a law enforcement. They have expert knowledge of job requirements and often have the best position to praise and recognize each other's performance on a daily basis, for they have the most opportunity to observe the employee on a day-to-day activity. A disadvantage is the potential for friendship to bias ratings. We have to choose peers who are above average performers and continually produce a professional work output. Subordinates, especially valuable source when managers are evaluated. Subordinates is someone who is lower rank and under the authority of another. They have the best opportunity to evaluate how well a manager treats employees. Upward feedback refers to appraisals that involve collecting subordinates' evaluation of managers' behavior or skills. Self, not often used as a sole source of information because they have a tendency toward flated assessments, although they can still be valuable. Individuals have an extensive opportunities to measure their own behavior, and self-evaluations have lessened the fear and anxiety associated with old appraisal process. Lastly are the customers. They are involved by many companies in their evaluation system because the product is often produced and consumed on the spots. Supervisors, peers, and subordinates often do not have an opportunity to observe employee behavior. So evaluation made by customers is appropriate in 2 situations. The first one is when employee's job requires direct service to the customer, and the second one is when the company is interested in gathering information to determine what products and services the customer wants. 360-degree appraisal. 360-degree appraisal is a recent popular trend. Because evaluation can be subjective, they use this because it consists of multiple raters providing input into a manager's evaluation. It provides a means of minimizing bias and includes self-evaluation as well as evaluation from the manager's boss, subordinates, peers, and customers. Use of technology in performance management. So technology influences performance management in 4 ways. The first one is many companies are moving web-based online paperless performance management system. Second one, social media tools are increasingly being used for timely feedback. Social performance management refers to systems that track progress in real time. Social performance management refers to systems that are similar to Facebook, LinkedIn, and allows employees to quickly exchange information, talk to each other, provide coaching, and receive recognition. The third one, companies are starting to use gamification in performance management. Gamification are game-based strategies that are applied to performance management to make it fun, effective, transparent, and an inclusive process for employees and managers. The last one, companies are relying on electronic tracking and monitoring systems to ensure employees are working. Good managers know what their employees are doing. An electronic system should not be substitute for good management. Technology helps ensure time is not abused, improves scheduling, motivate workers, and improves performance. Critics argue that such systems result in less productivity and motivation, demoralize employees, and create unnecessary stress. Some argue that electronic tracking systems are needlessly surveilling and tracking employees when there is no reason to believe that anything is wrong. Reducing rater errors, politics, and increasing reliability and validity of ratings. We often use heuristics or simplifying mechanisms to make judgment whether about investments or about people. Heuristics are relating to exploratory problem-solving techniques that utilize self-educating techniques, such as evaluation of feedback to improve performance. These heuristics, which appear often as subjective measures in performance, can lead to rater errors. Performance evaluation may also be purposefully distorted in order to achieve personal or company goals. Research consistently shows that humans have tremendous limitations in processing information. Here we have examples of rater errors and their description. So, similar to me. Individuals who are similar to us in race, gender, background, interests, beliefs receive higher ratings than those who are not. Contrast. Ratings influenced by comparison between individuals instead of an objective standard. Leniency. Rater gives high ratings to all employees regardless of their performance. Strictness. Rater gives low ratings to all employees regardless of their performance. Central tendency. Rater gives middle or average ratings to all employees despite their performance. Halo. Rater gives employees high ratings on all aspects of performance because of their overall positive impression of the employee. Horns. Rater gives employee low ratings on all aspects of performance because of an overall negative impression of the employee. Appraisal politics. This is actually mentioned in the last bullet of the last slide. So, appraisal politics refers to evaluators purposefully distorting a rating to achieve personal or company goals. It is most likely to occur when raters are accountable to the employee being rated, there are competing rating goals, or there is a direct link between performance appraisal and highly desirable rewards. So for example, the manager rates an employee that works under him. He is most likely to give the employee an overall positive rating because he is accountable to that employee, and there may be a direct link between performance appraisal and rewards. There are three approaches in reducing rater errors. Rater error training, the rater accuracy training, and calibration meeting. So rater error training attempts to make managers aware of rating errors and helps them develop strategies for minimizing those errors. It has been shown to be effective for reducing errors, but there is evidence that reducing rating errors also reduces accuracy. So rater accuracy training attempts to emphasize the multidimensional nature of performance. It is to get raters understand use the same idea of high, medium, and low performance when making evaluation. The last one is calibration meeting. These are meetings attended by managers in which employee performance ratings are discussed and evidence supporting the ratings are provided. So apart from reducing errors, these are also managerial tasks that managers should always do. The first one is to build management support for the appraisal system and actively discourage distortion. Give raters some latitude to customize performance and objectives and criteria for their ratees. Recognize employee accomplishments that are not self-promoted. Provide employee with access to information regarding which behaviors are desired and acceptable at work. Encourage employees to actively seek and use feedback to improve performance. Make sure constraints such as budget do not drive the process. Make sure appraisal processes are consistent across the company. And lastly, foster a climate of openness to encourage employees to be honest about their weaknesses. Performance feedback. This is our last topic. So feedback is very important in performance measurement. Once the expected performance has been defined and employees' performance have been measured, it is necessary to feed that performance information to the employees to correct any deficiencies. So the employees will know if they have to improve or be consistent. To contribute to the effectiveness of a performance management system through providing effective feedback, managers should consider the following recommendations. Feedback should be given frequently, not once in a year. Managers have a responsibility to correct performance deficiencies immediately on becoming aware of them. So once the manager notices that a particular employee is lacking on this certain field or this certain area, they have to feed that information to the employee so that the employee can improve. Next, we have create the right context for the discussion. The manager's office may not be the best place for a constructive feedback session because the employee may associate the office with unpleasant conversation. Managers should choose a neutral location for the feedback session. Next, we have ask the employee to rate his or her performance before the session. Having employees complete a self-assessment before the feedback session requires them to think about their performance over the past rate period and encourages them to think about their weaknesses. Although self-ratings used for administrative decisions are often inflated, there is evidence that they may actually be lower than supervisors' ratings when done for developmental purpose. Encourage the employee to participate in the session. Managers can take one of the three approaches in performance feedback sessions. The first one is the tell and sell approach. So in the tell and sell approach, managers tell the employee how they have rated them and justify those ratings. The second one is the tell and listen approach. The tell and listen approach, the managers tell the employees how they have rated them and then they let the employee explain their side of the story. And then the last one is the problem-solving approach. In the problem-solving approach, the managers and the employee work together to solve performance problems in an atmosphere of respect and encouragement. Next one is recognize effective performance through praises. Praising effective performance provides reinforcement for that behavior. It adds credibility to the feedback by making it clear that the manager is not just identifying performance problems. The purpose of this approach is to give accurate feedback, which entails recognizing performance as well as poor performance. Next is focus on solving problems. This entails working with the employee to determine the actual cause and then agreeing on how to solve this. This is like the problem-solving approach in the last slide. Next one, focus feedback on behavior or results, not on the person. Avoid questioning the employee's worth as a person. This is best accomplished by focusing the discussion on the employee's behaviors and results, not on the employee. This can also be an act of professionalism. Minimize criticism. An effective manager should resist the temptation to reel off a litany of offenses. If the manager continues to come up with more and more examples of low performance, the employee may get defensive. So when giving the feedback, the manager should always be neutral and avoid very negative or very positive comments. The last one is agree to specific goals and set a date to review progress. Besides setting goals, the manager must also set a specific follow-up date to review employees' performance towards the goal. So, like it was mentioned in the first recommendation, that feedback should be given frequently, not once in a year. So, managers needs to set a specific follow-up date so they review the employee's performance or the employee's improvement. Diagnosing the causes of poor performance. So there are many reasons why an employee exhibit poor performance. Over here are the factors in analyzing them. The first one is input. Does the employee recognize what he or she is supposed to do? Are the job flow and procedures logical? Are other job demands interfering with good performance in this area? Then we have employee characteristic. Does the employee have the necessary skills and knowledge needed? Is the employee mentally, physically, and emotionally able to perform at the expected level? We have feedback. Has the employee been given information about his or her performance? Performance standard and goals. Do performance standard exist? Does the employee know the desired level of expected performance? Does the employee believe she or he can reach the performance standards? And lastly, consequences. Are consequences aligned with good performance? Are the consequences of performance valuable to the employee? Are performance consequences given in a timely manner? So feedback sessions are provided so that employees can adjust their performance toward the organization goals. It is also fulfilled through tying rewards to performance via compensation system. And that wraps up lesson 6. Let's move on to lesson 7.